So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about this. I've gotten a couple questions. So first of all, it's going to be 5 pages, which will give you 100 cards. And if you look, you can see, I'm calling these a micro size because you can see how small these cards are. Now, they're going to be on, you're going to get 20 of these cards on one sheet. So if you can imagine them just laid out on one sheet, side by side, there are going to be columns and rows. I have an example here of a piece of one. So this is just a piece of one of the strips. So I've designed it so that all you have to do is cut it down, or cut it straight across. And you're just going to cut out these individual squares or images. I do want to say that they're not designed to be perfectly cut. So this was really created for a flipbook oracle, which is this. So they weren't designed to be perfect. They weren't designed to line up evenly and have all the edges like really perfect. So if you're expecting that, you will be disappointed. I actually like the imperfections. I want this to look like, a real vintage oracle. These are actual vintage portraits. But you'll notice, for example, on this one, that you can still see some of the white around some of the edges and not quite at the top. So that's actually how I like it. I like for them, the edges and things, to look a little bit rough. They all do have a frame or border to them. I added those in the editing process after I cropped them. So they do all have that, but you just need to know that when you cut each image out, you may not get a really perfect size, for each one. That's fine. Because they're so small, I don't think that you will be able to rifle shuffle them. And probably not do a really good overhand shuffle, although you might be able to do a little bit of a overhand shuffle. I really designed them to be done with a washing shuffle, to be mixed up just like this. This is washing. So you're just kind of putting both hands in there and just mixing them up. You need a really, nice sized table so you can mix them all up without things going all over the place. And then you can always just pick one, or you can pick more than one, which is actually how I like to use them. So I tend to use these to make more intentional poetry rather than divinatory poetry, but I'll go through both of them just so you can get a sense of how to make them. But first, let me just talk to you about how you might, after you could do your washing shuffle, how do you select your cards? I think it's also a good idea to have a little bag. I tend to put mine in a bag, and sometimes I just reach in. You can shake the bag up and reach in and pull out a card, or 2 or 3. So that's one way that I really find helpful, and they all fit in this bag really nicely. And then you can also, again, you could close your eyes, or you can just turn over a couple of cards and see what you get. If you're doing intentional poetry, you can just look and see what jumps out at you. That's really how I start the intentional poetry, which is we're just making poems with the lines and phrases. And that's how I designed this to be used to make poetry. So the lines and phrases that are on these cards come from 14 historic poems written by African Americans. And I picked these lines and phrases specifically to use to create really powerful and emotional poems. And so you can just look through here and maybe pull some apart, whatever stands out to you, and just start pairing things up to make intentional poetry. And I usually do this pretty quickly, just figuring out what goes together, what I want to pair, what makes sense, some things that seem kind of like irreverent pairings, put those together, and then you'll have a poem. Now, even if you're making intentional poetry, to me it's still divinatory, meaning it's giving you some insight about yourself, about your life, what's going on with you. But you can also purposely just make divinatory poems by focusing first on a question or an intention, some area of your life that you'd like to know about, or a specific question. And usually for these self-discovery questions are really great. And then you can close your eyes or just sort through your pile, and you want to pick one at random. This is where using your little bag would be helpful. Reach in the bag, focusing on your question or intention, and then pulling out a card. Now, sometimes just one card will give you enough information if you are skilled at reading things symbolically. But a lot of times you might need more than one card. I always like to do 3 cards. 3 is a magical number. And so you can pull out those 3 cards. You might even want to move them around to get your message, and just read it for its symbolic message. You may have to sit with this poem for a while to let it, I always say it kind of has to percolate a little bit sometimes. Sometimes you won't get insights until the next day or after you've slept on it. But a lot of times you'll get some immediate insights just from the symbolism that you see here. So when I pulled all of these lines and phrases, I really did focus on the symbolism and tried to keep a good mix of different symbols so that you can create some really wonderful poems. Now, if you want to make the flipbook oracle that you see here, and this is all the cards, they've been hole punched so that they can be assembled into this little flip book. I'll just turn it to the side so you can see what the side looks like. So it will stand up on its own. And you can just flip, flip, and flip, and then you can get a message from the cards that you flipped. And this I do use as more of a divinatory tool. I don't really try to use this as creating intentional poems. I just do a flip. So you could still do your question, your focus question or intention, and then just flip and see what you get. And you can use this for your divinatory poetry. And I think this makes a really nice decor item for your home as well. It's really cute, and I just love using this like on a daily basis, just to get a sense of my day or my week, or just to really see what spirit messages are there for me. So that's the Flipbook Oracle. Again, you'd have to take these cards once you print them out and you have them laminated and cut out. You would just add your hole punch to the top. And then you'd need 3 book rings. And I do have another post on that, on making a vintage flipbook oracle, which you can see, and it'll give you some of the instructions for setting this up. So I hope that you enjoy the Black History Poetry Oracle that I've made, and I'd love to see you share your poems throughout Black History Month in February and beyond.